Hello everyone, I want to bring you a little bit of a different video today. This video will be about this invasion into this 3-space extension as part of this Joseki here that we often play in the DDK to SDK series. This will also apply to this other Joseki that I also try to get people to play in this series. So we get information that will apply to both areas equally. I believe everything is exactly the same, which is why I actually suggest people to play these Josekis in this series, because there's only one thing that we will really have to study. And one of the next steps on the DDK to SDK journey is really learning how to take advantage of your opponent's areas. We don't need to just study invasions in general or reductions in general. We should always be studying things in a context of the opening that we are playing. So of course, if you are not playing this opening, the information is still useful. This is still a Joseki that happens fairly frequently. You should be focusing on whatever happens the most in your own actual games. In this case, it will be this 3-space extension here. And I'm going to be playing a lot more, and making sure to follow up on is this R11 stone who try to threaten this group, or in this case over here, the R12 stone, to really threaten this group and try to get some sort of advantage from it. Of course, as white, I think it's really important to just answer. This fixes every problem that you could have for the most part, gives you a very solid position, and the AI is not even against this idea too. Playing this really solid jump is always going to be fine. As black, you can now go play along the top side to approach something, or you could even answer and solidify your own area. I suggest this more with this variation here, where if we answer, black jumping is even better because it's 4 spaces instead of 3, but this is always going to be an acceptable response. So let's get back to the actual potential invasion stuff. This will be more complicated than what I typically cover, but I'm also not going to go over like the 9-dan variation or the pro variation necessarily, because there are some more complicated things that I could even go into. I do think it's really important to study things that you see frequently. And for the DDK to SDK series, this is one of the only positions that we really have to study in depth. And this will sort of tell you how in depth you need to look. Sometimes you need to try to find some videos like this one that'll tell you everything. Sometimes you'll be able to find this information in books, or if you have to, you will have to use AI in order to figure out some things. Now, you don't need to study every single possible variation here, just the ones that you see or have seen people try in your own games. So of course, you do need to throw a stone in here to actually see if they do something and to see how they respond. And if they're doing something that you don't really recognize, then you can go and study that if you want to. But I think it's good to try to problem solve a little bit in the game itself first. And if you are happy with the result you got, you don't necessarily have to look it up. But if you couldn't find a good result, that's when you would look it up and try to find something better. In this case, there are kind of 2 options that are extremely common. The first one is the attach on top. The idea of the move that black played is to try to separate white. So if white plays away again, black is able to do this diagonal here and completely separate the 2 groups. And of course, if white keeps running out with one side and saves one of the sides, the other side is likely just dead. And it's the same the other way. If white jumps out to save this group, the other white stone is just going to be dead. It's going to be a very difficult fight, and you don't really want to have to deal with that. So if we go back here, the attachment on top is trying to prevent the separation from happening. Something that's really important to note is that you're not really trying to force something in particular. Like, we want to make sure they're 100% separated. What we're trying to just do is threaten to do something over and over until we get some profit from the position. White doesn't want you to disconnect them, so they're playing on top to try to stay connected. A very basic and old variation, which we're going to be improving upon as we go along, is bumping here. We're still threatening to push through, right? So white wants to stay connected, and then we can just connect up underneath. So as I said, all we're really doing is we're threatening to do something that would hurt them. We're not literally forcing that forcing that in any way. So if white decides to play something they shouldn't play, like they're going up here and they're letting you just cut through them and hurt them in some way, this is no good. Now, I don't want to go over, as I said, every single variation here. These are things that you should try to problem solve in your own games and then look up afterwards if you couldn't find a way. Yeah, white should just be trying to stay connected. You were threatening to cut through. They don't want to let that happen. Now you're able to connect up to your own stones here. The best move that white can play is actually this double hane, because you have to Atari, they connect, and you connect. And now there's at least a little bit of aji they can try to use in the future. This is the standard type of variation that is likely to occur in this position. White gets some sort of wall facing this outside area, and you get to take all the territory away. That's sort of what you're kind of expecting here. This is not going to be like significantly better for black. As a matter of fact, I think AI actually prefers this a little bit for white, but AI actually does like outward influence, especially in the opening. But it's going to be a perfectly acceptable result for both sides. This is probably the easiest variation if you just want to do something simple. There is a way to make it better. Now, before we move away from the situation, I do also want to note that while you can play away now as white, I generally suggest that you don't. I do suggest at least one more move, like jumping here, and now the group feels fine. The base was taken away from white's position. They got influence instead, but they're really far away from their own position on the left side. So in order to make the group feel more safe and be a lot more solid, jumping out to the center to try to gain a little bit of a base towards the center is going to be the right way to play a solid game. And you can leave the position if you want to play a fast game, though. We'll keep this whole thing in mind while we work through the other variations. Something that we discovered next, because we do want to try to connect up underneath in some way that makes it really simple, is this really nice tesuji, which I did show off, I believe, in a few of my videos, and that is extending to the side of the board here on the second line. The idea is that white still does not really want us to try to disconnect or to try to do anything special in the center here, so they're going to connect their stones up, and then we're going to connect as well. This actually looks very, very similar to the crawling variation, but this time you're connecting to the corner, and white can still play away now if they want to, or again, defend in the center, which is what I usually suggest. So I guess a good question to be asking at this point would be, what happens if white prevents you from trying to connect to the corner? I believe this did happen in a couple of my games where they played this sort of hane. And I believe what I did in those games is I blocked and captured and still just connected, because I thought that was good enough, because that's what they sort of let me do. That was just me trying to simplify the position, but what you're actually supposed to do is a little bit more complicated. One other thing that you are threatening is this attachment underneath. This isn't the best move, but you can see that if we play it properly, white is supposed to answer on the outside somewhere. You're supposed to just stay connected, and then they should again be jumping towards the center. Or they could play away again. This ends up, again, a very similar variation, which is kind of interesting to note that no matter how it ends up, as long as you connect, they get the influence and they get to jump out. By studying this position, we can learn a little bit more about sacrificing stones. So they are trying to prevent us from connecting up, instead of playing the proper move of extending here. So your opponent's vital point is your vital point. If they play this one, which was what you were trying to do, you can now play this hane. Surprisingly, the AI, and I believe old professional games and such, all agree that you're supposed to extend here now. And black is able to just capture this stone, and white should be coming over the top in some way. This feels very strange for white, in my opinion, and this is actually really good for black. But that's because white made a mistake of the hane in the corner, not because of what they did later. This is still a perfectly playable game for white. Because if you go back and play the move that most people are going to try to play here, which is this cut, right? They played this hane to separate. So if you hane, they're going to cut you to try to kill your stones. But you are 100% okay with those stones getting killed. You can actually just Atari over the top here, threatening to rescue them and cut and break through really nicely, so they have to connect. And then we can use the fact that we extended down to the side to gain liberties to try to take advantage of our opponent's stones. Black actually has 4 liberties and white has 4 liberties. So if we take a liberty away, we're actually close to winning this capturing race now. White needs to expand their liberties at this point. So in order to expand their liberties, they have to extend, and they have 4 liberties again. We take another liberty, they're back to 3. So they're still in trouble. So they still want to try again here, and you can double hane at this point, and a nice tesuji to take advantage of the fact that they do not have that many liberties. If they now connect, because that's probably what they should do, now they have 4 liberties again, but you have a weakness on the outside that you should defend. You can defend with the double tiger's mouth or just connection here. And if they don't play again on the inside, they're actually dead. So they have to play another move to make sure these stones are dead. This gives you a really nice wall on the outside in exchange for the 2 stones that you sacrificed. Something that's really important to note here is that black didn't really lose anything. If you think back upon the original position as black, if we go all the way back here to the beginning, we were only gaining a small amount with this sort of extension. We're not really gaining that much. We're just mostly threatening the white position. As we go along and we play this variation of going down here, they try to prevent us from connecting, and we get this hane, and they cut. As we go along, we still basically have that same exact position. We're maybe pushed back a very small amount, right? We were just this stone here, and now we're pushed back a little bit. But nothing else has really changed about our position, except for the fact that we now have this extremely strong wall that we're projecting influence towards this area of the board. There's a funny little shape here, but whatever, we'll go with it. We've only gained from this exchange, and white is a little bit stronger, you could say, but they're also almost completely surrounded. In order to really use any of the influence from this position, they still have to jump out towards the center. Otherwise, this group is just a living group and that's it. But it's black's move. So black can just play away and build in a very large way. Looking at this with AI actually says that this is like a 95% win rate for black at this point. And you're about 6 to 8 points ahead. And that's just how much better this position is for black, which is really interesting, honestly. I know I generally prefer influence, but this really shows you how important that influence actually is. Black did take a little bit of damage from this position. White was able to get this hane here, which is going to be able to push into the corner later and reduce our corners to some degree. So this is not a perfect result for black, but it's still considered to be extremely nice. If white plays any move differently, like let's say they jump out right now, we can just turn and these stones are strictly dead. We may not even need another move because it's 3 liberties to 4 liberties here. And there's just nothing that white can do to try to win. Even if they play on the outside, we can probably just ignore it again. So if we go back a little bit here, this is not really something that white wants to try to do. That's why we extend and black just gets to capture the stone, because black gets too much influence the other way, whereas this way, white gets to control some of the center instead. You can look this up later if you really want to try to figure out why white plays these moves. I'm not going to worry too much about that for now. So if we back up a little bit more, this extension used to be considered sort of the proper move, and it probably still is considered the proper move here. It's almost never going to lead you wrong. You're always going to have some good position out of it. But as you saw, the thing that we really want here as black, or the thing that gives us the highest win rate as black, is when white doesn't defend this here at this moment, and we just get to connect underneath. This is still going to be good, but it's more or less an even result. So what the AI has figured out, and I don't even know if the pros of this, I know that I only really saw this after the AI started going over everything for us, but it may be an innovation from pros, I don't actually know. But the thing that I've noticed the most here is that we actually can play this hane right now. And after we get this hane, there's only one move that white can play. White has to cut at this point, right? So when we go down and white plays this hane, we then get to cut them in the center here. And white is getting at least a little bit of a reduction in the corner, which is not great because we get a really great position as well, but it is helpful. But if we just don't make that exchange and we just play this hane first, white has to cut still because they can't just give that up. They aren't getting any profit here, because if they give this up now, this is just too nice for black. We didn't make any bad exchanges. There's been nothing wrong here at all. So white has to cut. We can just Atari over the top and still take advantage of the liberties of this group. If we do this one, they still have to sort of go back and kind of capture this stone to some degree. I think even for a while it was considered to do this. It was considered important to capture first, and then black gets to just fix their outside position and still have a very strong outside here. But the problem with this is that white's not necessarily alive locally. If we play away, you can see that just this Atari and this hane, you can kind of see there's only really one eye on this side, and they only really have this one eye in the center. Yes, you'll have to connect at some point with one of them, but it's not a perfectly living group, which is the point here. There's other considerations as well, but to keep it simple, it's not a perfectly alive group yet. It's something that we will have to think about in the future. So if white decides to keep playing the same way as they did in the other variation, right? We bump here to extend our liberties. When we play this hane, black can still play the double hane. Nothing has actually changed. This extension's not necessary for the double hane. And if white actually plays the same move, right, this connection, and we get to defend as well, white actually owes another move on the side here. I was going to say in the corner, but on the side here. If they play away, black actually has a really nice tesuji to take advantage of the situation. Now, for people who are pretty good at reading, you might think that you can play away, because if we compare to the other variation, when black goes down here, you can just block on the inside like this, and there's not that many liberties for black. And there's actually a nice tesuji that if they try to connect up underneath, you can do this wedge. And there's no way for these two stones to be saved. It's a little bit of an optimistic read in this case, because if we go back here, when you play away, black has a different move they can play, which is actually kind of hard to find if you've never seen it before. And that is this diagonal. This does seem a little bit weird, but if we play the natural move, which is blocking to prevent the connection, black can now play the hane on this side. And with this here, you can see that white is the one who's actually losing this capture race. And they will have to be jumping out towards the center to try to save themselves. If we go back again here, it seems like, okay, the natural move is the wrong one, but we can also just ladder the stones, right? If black connects, we can just Atari, it's no good. Black can actually just pull back, because after you capture this stone, that's a false eye. You did not gain an eye, and this is not two eyes. So black can actually just surround the white group, and it is almost dead, if not dead. We'll have to fight extremely hard to escape towards the center at this point. So white is in a lot of trouble. So because of that, we have to go back here and actually answer on the inside somewhere. The proper move is actually this one. It goes into a little bit detail for some other stuff, but in general, just playing a move here to capture is going to be important. And black is the one who's able to expand first, or move to the bigger area first. That means this move is actually a mistake. Kind of funny. It was the move we needed last time to gain extra liberties, but now it's a little bit of a mistake. You actually have to play this diagonal instead, or this tiger's mouth instead. We still connect, and now you can play away if you want to. But again, this is still a really nice result for black. We still actually get the same sort of position that we would have gotten if we'd done if white played a mistake. But we didn't even have to give up any points in the corner to get it, right? Because now, let's say white plays away, and then we did this one, they have this exchange, and then we got that influence on the outside. It's like we're giving up some of the corner here, which we don't normally have to give up, right? So we don't even need to play those moves, and we can still get the same result, which is kind of funny. So if we go back again here, we can actually find a nicer tesuji for white, which is really interesting. We'll go over all these again at the end, by the way. But we can find a nicer tesuji for white. Because black didn't extend to the second line, white's actually able to now attach instead of just bump. Because if we already had this exchange here, like in the other variation, when white attaches, black can just bump this way and capture the stones. It's no good. It's just absolutely no good. But because that exchange is not there, we can actually attach first. Black has to block in some way. White can pull back. Black needs to defend. And now white is able to play away and play a big move somewhere else. There's actually still a really good result for us. And you can even use your aji right away, which is this move here. If they block the corner, block us from connecting out to the corner in some way, we can get another exchange right now, which forces them to play again. And it sort of turns into that same situation where black has a really nice and strong position, and we just move on and play whatever we want on the rest of the board. It does seem like we're going into a lot of detail here. I do suggest you watch this video multiple times, but I think it's important to look at a lot of this detail. There's still some stuff that I have not even covered, like there's still good end game to be played here, and that's something I would also study. And there's still like a lot of aji to work with, but we're not going into 9-dan level detail. We're just going into the basics that you should understand to some degree. So let's go all the way back here. This is kind of all you need to know about this attachment. As I said, we will go over this again a little bit later. As you saw, this attachment is considered to be slightly bad by AI because we can do this hane and get a really nice outside position. And there's a bunch of mistakes that white can make, but black doesn't really have any mistakes that they can really run into here, which is what makes it really easy to play, even though it looks pretty complicated. It's pretty forgiving, you could say. What the AI actually suggests for white is to play this diagonal move. And this is actually the other move that I see people play quite often here. But usually the reason they're playing this is because they want to try to capture the black stones, which is not really the goal. The goal is to prevent black from getting that really nice outside position. But what's really cool about this is that we can use that information that we have, that other invasion or that other variation of this invasion to actually figure out the answer here. So the answer goes back to an old tesuji that used to be considered good before we found that hane. So we push to expose cutting points, and then we extend back to the second line. Now white actually has to defend on the outside. That's the proper move. They should defend, and now you can connect back up underneath, and white needs to actually defend again somehow. I think actually peep and jump is sort of the better idea here. If they don't defend and they really try to kill you, right? They really try to stop you from doing anything, then you're able to start cutting and doing a lot of damage. Or you can actually just connect up underneath directly, which is why we talked about that before. If they hane here, you atari, or you cut, not atari, they atari, now you double atari, they capture, you double atari, they connect, and you capture the stone for another ko here, which is really nice for black. You don't really want to play a ko in the opening, yeah, but this position is a good position here for black. No matter what the ko thread is, you can always capture, and even if you lose the ko, you didn't really lose that much locally. This is all white's area that we're working in, and so you'll lose like 1 or 2 points, but you'll get to be able to play 2 moves somewhere else on the board. So this seems like it's going to be a good exchange for black, even if they lose. All right, so if we go all the way back again, just using the variations that we learned from this position, we can actually figure out how to apply that to other moves that are played here, like this diagonal. But something you'll notice with this diagonal is that white is able to sort of force the ability to get the outside here and not allow black to get the outside. So that's why AI seems to like this a little bit more. Kind of an interesting thing going on here. I like it a lot, actually. Now, even I had to research this a little bit for the video so I could really try to understand it better. Interestingly, I think most people probably wouldn't even know this, even at the dawn level. So that's why it's really good to try to study something like this and study it as in-depth as you possibly can. Again, I'm not going into the most small details. I'm just going over the bigger details here. So let's go back again here, and let's get back to this first spot. There is a difference if they do decide to play high. We've been focusing on this low move quite a lot, but there is a difference if they play high. I usually suggest the low move because I do think it's easier to handle. What I mean by that is I do think that you should just jump right away when they approach you like this. Your group becomes a very solid group. You'll never really have to worry about it again for the rest of the game. And if you don't want to defend, often the high move is a little bit better. But the problem is when black plays here, you just don't really want to be going down to the side. A lot of these moves feel a little bit awkward because you're exchanging a second line or another third line move for a third line move. It feels like black's getting a little bit of a better position. I would rather be jumping up towards the 5th line versus playing down again. So if you don't really want to defend, you're supposed to play away now, right? You go play somewhere else. And this is actually really easy. You can still do the same sort of invasion here. And it's actually kind of hard for white to fight back at this point. It's just going to be basically the same type of variation. We're just connecting up here. And I believe even white's supposed to take away this tiger's mouth and then go back and defend in the center somewhere. So it still looks very similar to the other variations. So sometimes this is a little bit easier, but I think if you just defend this group first, and you don't have to worry about the invasion anyway, you get more points that way and a very strong position, similar to what you get here. This one's harder to understand how to use. There is technically a way to try to take advantage of this area as well. But I think for now, this is good enough. We don't need to go into that much more detail. If we want to, this would be a separate video, like doing this, trying to separate this position here. So let's go back and talk about the positions that we already looked at. Low here. Well, actually, before we do it in the same position, let's actually go to the other position here, the approaching low position. So you can see how it is exactly the same. It's the exact same information. This is the same exact extension. It's 2 stone wall with a 3 space extension. And if they play away, you can always do this again. The most common move that you're likely to run into is this attach on top. If you want to keep it extremely simple, you can just crawl and try to connect. This is the most straightforward way of playing. White should do this double hane, and you shouldn't capture the stone. You should just connect back. Now they have a little bit of aji left over to use in this area, and they should then jump out towards the center. If you want to be a little bit more complicated, you can play this extend down move, which allows them the opportunity to try to hane in the corner or to just connect back like this, which is still going to be the most common idea. Because if they hane in the corner, there's a little bit of a difference here because there's a little bit more weakness here, but you can still get the same sort of variation that we were seeing before, where we're going to use the liberties that we have. We have 4 liberties to try to take advantage of what our opponent's position looks like. They will have to connect. We can connect in whatever way we want here. Double tiger's mouth, or just connect solid. They need to defend again, and then we're able to go back and block here if we need to. This is probably the major difference, is that you probably do want to come back and block with this position. If they are trying to do something here, you are able to just go back and capture. We're going to ignore this. We're threatening something. We need to follow up on our threat first. That is one of the major differences here for sure. So I do think sometimes with this one, if you're worried about the corner in some way, this is always going to be the easiest answer. Or if we go back, we can always do the hane instead first, which is the one I'm going to suggest to try. Even if you don't necessarily understand it, we want to try it. They cut, we atari, and we don't do that. And we try to take the liberties away from this position. They can just capture right away, but we get a very solid position and they're not 100% alive. So if they want to be 100% alive, they should attach here. We have to block on the outside. They connect. We can go and connect as well. Now they should be alive. They don't have to answer anymore and they can play away. We can extend down here and fix our shape on the outside. And then we can go play whatever move we want to next. If they make a mistake and they do not attach, it's not a huge mistake, but if they don't attach and they just extend, we can just block. We get this nice double hane. They're supposed to play the hane connection and we connect and then they can play away. We have a much stronger shape here, which is why we don't need to play another move. We just move on already. But if they play the connection instead and we connect, they actually have to play one more move, any move over here to make sure that this is alive. Because if they do not play another move and they play away now, we have this really cool tesuji here. If they block, the stones on the other side are just dead directly. And if they atari, we connect back to the corner to make this a false eye, which we then surround, and this group is basically just dead. You'll see that it's almost identical for both of these joseki. There's almost no difference here. Your corner's in a little bit more danger with this one, but it's still okay to sacrifice that if you're able to capture these stones. That gives you a really nice boost in the opening. That is sort of the overall idea behind what is going on here. Like all the sort of variations I think are important to try to know and to try to remember. Again, I think that white should just be jumping here and defending, and you can always just follow along and that's always going to be fine. This is a way to play a very solid game. But if you want to play fast, you do have to understand that you're going to get in trouble as white here. You're going to have to give something up. Now white can force the outside to be the position taken by doing the diagonal instead. We push up to expose cutting points. Then we go down to threaten to connect up on either side. If they connect, we connect, they can just try to fix their shape on the outside. If they really try to stop us from connecting here, we can always connect on the other side because there's no way for them to get a great position here. Now this is a little bit different again. Because we don't have the 2 stones here, they can actually just go directly into the corner at this point. And we probably want to take an extension here. Because even if we lose this ko, it's not that big of a deal. But you can actually even just capture if you want to. Also, something to keep in mind, if you want to avoid some of this complication and not want to connect up underneath, you can actually just block. Because even if they stop you from connecting here, you always have this capture, and they can't cut you off here, really. There's still a lot of problems here. Maybe they can try a move like this one, but this one is opening a lot of weakness here. So if they connect on the outside, you can still capture this one. They have to connect again, and you can still just connect underneath, so that's not very good. And then if they try to prevent that from happening, we have Atari, we have connect. Now we've captured the other side. There's still a lot of Aji here. I'm not going to show you the proper variation to try to win here. The point is to use your knowledge that you've obtained in this video to try to apply that to unusual moves that they play, and only look it up after you don't understand how to respond. So the last thing I really want to talk about is how to really study this, right? Yes, you watch this video, it's going to be pretty long, and that will be the first step. The next step I think is important is to put all of these variations, all the important variations, you have to decide which ones were important based on what I told you, into your own SGF file and try to write down the reason for every move. That's one of the best ways to get better or to really learn a Joseki position or an invasion Joseki of some sort. Assigning some sort of value to a move or some sort of idea to a move is extremely helpful. It doesn't matter if you're right or wrong at all. All that matters is that you're assigning your value or whatever you can think of to that move. So it's good to try to work through that. I like to do it on a real board whenever I can. I try to do it from memory, and then I go back and look at the SGF file that I ended up making for it. That's one reason why I don't always share SGF files, because I do think it's important for you to try to go and make one yourself to help you with remembering positions. And then the next thing is to try to play this in every single game until you have it understood as best you can. Something that you'll notice from the DDK to SDK series is that this position actually happens quite often. And I can always sort of force this to happen. But if they just answer me here, well, then I can't do the practice anymore, and we just play a normal game. Whenever they don't answer, we always just invade right away, and we try to use that knowledge that we learned from this video and try to apply it as soon as possible, and in as many games as possible as well. The cool part about this Joseki, or these Josekis, is that you can put it in basically every game as white or black. There's no restriction here. So if you're white in this game, like let's say black starts with 4 4s, and we start like this one, we'll do it this way, make it a little bit easier. If they approach high or low, we can just do this. And yeah, normally I would say just to enclose the corner here, which you can still do. But you can also try to just work on practicing this specific thing right away. Yes, we're leaving the corner a little bit more open, but the point of the game here is to practice. So if you're in a tournament game, you may not want to do this. But if you're playing a random game on Fox, on OGS, anything, a lot of that's for practice, right? We want to try to get better, and the only way to get better is to put every little bit of information that we learn into practice as soon as possible. So again, review the video as many times as you need to. If you have any questions about something that I may not have covered, because it's possible I just forgot something, definitely leave a question down below. Ask as many questions as you can. Make an SGF of your own that covers the variations that I said were the most, like the final variation, the final positions that you need to make sure you own. Or you can even put all of the positions into the SGF file yourself. And again, apply it as soon as possible. Try to play it out on a real board to try to remember it try to do it from memory, and then play it in real games as soon as possible. And then right after the game, go and check to make sure you did play it correctly based on the variations that you put in the SGF file. Go check the video and that sort of stuff. That's how I really recommend setting every position that you can. I hope this video was helpful. Let me know again if you have any questions. This is going to be a bit more complicated than normal, but I think it's important to try to tackle things that are complicated. That's one way of trying to get better. I hope you guys are having a good day and have fun.